Hello, everybody. I'm Dominic Tierney. I teach in political science. I'm going to talk to you today about the Joe Biden doctrine. It's a great tradition in American politics to search for a presidential doctrine or a defining statement of a president's foreign policy beliefs. So we have the Obama doctrine, which perhaps you might capture as no more Iraq wars, or the Donald Trump doctrine, to stop America getting taken for a ride by institutions or allies. So what is the Biden doctrine? Well, some people say he's a hawk, some people say he's a dove. I'm going to suggest that there really is no defined Biden doctrine, and that's probably a good thing. So the whole notion of a presidential doctrine implies that presidents just stamp their beliefs on foreign policy. But in truth, presidents are also creatures of the age. And I think that's especially true for someone like Biden, who is a natural conciliator, a natural deal maker. Trump was once asked which advisor he listened to on foreign policy, and he said, quote unquote, myself. Whereas Biden currently has 2,000 foreign policy advisors. That's enough if you put them together to form a combat brigade in the US Army. So Biden never or very rarely strays far from Democratic mainstream thinking on foreign policy or even from wider public opinion. But on the other hand, he also steers within the current, and there are times where his personal experience has been significant. So one way to think about the Biden doctrine and to think about his 50 years in Washington is to divide up his career into three chapters. So the first chapter I would call Biden the Moderate. And this was the chapter from the Vietnam War, when he was a young senator, through the Gulf War in 91. So during this time, he was sort of a mainstream moderate Democrat. He supported some wars like Grenada and Panama, but he also opposed meddling in Nicaragua and famously opposed the first Gulf War, saying US interests were not sufficiently threatened. It was very risky. The second chapter is after the Gulf War from 91 to 2003. And in this period, Biden was really quite hawkish. He supported intervention in the Balkans. He regretted his past vote against the Gulf War. He supported the Afghanistan war. And of course, he supported authorizing the war in Iraq. The third chapter is after 2003, and this is the chapter you might call Biden the Dove, because since the Iraq War, which he deeply regretted, Biden has been consistently non-interventionist or skeptical of the use of force. He opposed the surge in Iraq and Afghanistan. He opposed the Libya war. He even opposed or was doubtful about the raid that killed bin Laden, and more recently was skeptical about the assassination of Iranian General Soleimani. So the tricky thing, though, is that in all of these three chapters, Biden was, in many cases, reflecting wider American public opinion. So many Americans were wary of more Vietnams in the 1980s. And then in the 1990s, it wasn't just Biden who was emboldened by the Gulf War and more enthusiastically seized the sword. After all, the Iraq War was popular, at least at the beginning. And then since 2003, of course, there's this wider Iraq syndrome where even the Republicans criticize forever wars. But this doesn't mean that Biden is just a kite in the wind. I think he was more dovish even than Obama in the Obama administration. And he was influenced, it seems, for instance, by the death of his son, Beau, in 2015 of cancer, which Joe Biden said might be connected to military burn pits that he experienced in Kosovo and Iraq. So the dilemma then is, who's the real Biden, right? Is it the Biden of the moderate of the 1980s? Is it Biden the dove? Is it Biden the hawk? I think it's all of these Bidens. His desire to reach agreement with opponents across the aisle and allies across the ocean makes it difficult to identify a unique doctrine. He's a man of his time, a man who shares many of the Democratic Party's or even American society's strengths and weaknesses, a man who's lived and learned in the shadows of war, a man who was tempted by the possibilities of power and is now tempered by the realities of force. And his journey's not over. Perhaps he'll pivot in a more hawkish direction as Iraq fades as a memory and China and Russia emerge as threats. But I think that doctrines, in the end, are overrated. The record of recent presidents who personalized, dominated foreign policy is really not encouraging. It may be that America needs Joe Biden more than it needs a Biden doctrine.